All right, we'd like to welcome you in this morning to session number 31, New Trends in Safety Analysis. And a couple of housekeeping things before I introduce our presenters. If you are here from out of, well, number one, we've got sign-in sheets, and I'll start one on each side of the room if we could. Also, if you're here from out of state and you would like some CEU credits, or like to register for CEU credits, we have these forms. We'll pass them back, but you only need to fill this out if you're here from out of state and you need a CEU credit. Okay? Okay, now to really get this kicked off, it's my pleasure this morning to introduce Scott Jones, Clancy Black, and Stan Burns, three individuals who've had a lot of foresight and a lot of involvement with what the product you're about to see here today. I'm really excited about it. Scott has worked at the department for 17 years. Stan, I'm sorry, I can't even guess right now. Longer than me, but 20 years. I've worked with both these gentlemen over the years, and they're fine gentlemen, and very intelligent, very smart, a lot of forethought in what they do. I've been happy to meet Clancy this last year. Clancy, you spent some time with the department, but are currently working with Numetric. And I will, without further ado, I guess I'll turn the time over to them.
Thank you. Good morning. Hope everybody's doing well. I told my daughter dropping her off at school this morning that next week it will actually not be pitch dark when we leave in the morning. Hope you're all awake, and thank you for coming at 8 o'clock. We're here to demonstrate to you several tools that we've been working on. One of them related to safety analysis, and the other one related to project delivery. And frankly, we're hoping both of these tools create a seamless suite of information that people can use in the concept and scoping phases of projects all the way through design and construction. We want to get information into people's hands. And specifically regarding safety and crash data, I'm the first to admit I'm the steward of that data, and it's been very difficult for people outside of our little safety niche to have readily available access to the data. That's been two reasons why that has historically been a problem. First of all, the crash data comes to us in a very weird and discombobulated process. We used to actually physically get the pieces of paper that the officers filled out, and we had a staff of data entry people that actually enter it into a database. That process would take 6 to 18 months, and people would say, why can't I get recent data? And it's because this is a long, laborious manual process. I'm happy to say now, since mid-2012, we get all of the crash reports electronically from the law enforcement agencies. And more of those law enforcement agencies are sending us GIS coordinates for those crashes. Now, we still have a staff of people that QC everything that they send us. And we tie that crash location to our linear referencing system. We assign it a route and milepost. And so we make it more accessible for the way we think as engineers at UDOT. So there's still some manual intervention there. But we've cut this down to, I'm comfortable to say within about 2 months, our crash data is pretty tight and pretty good. And so the next phase has been, how do we get it to the user? We have a very sophisticated Oracle database, and unless we all want to teach you about relational databases and how that works, it's been hard to take a crash report that has 120 elements in it, 120 fields of data, and share it in a way that makes it meaningful to people and not just dumping information and data on you. So we've been working with Clancy's company at Numetric about visualizing our data, and I really think they have some exciting tools for visualization. And not only just visualizing dots on a map, because as cool as that is, we've also combined the crash data with our roadway data and our traffic data And we're making some preliminary judgments about crash characteristics and what are possible mitigations for the groupings of crashes that we're seeing. And so design teams can take this information as early in the scoping process as possible and start looking at what do we have to plan as far as a budget and scope of our projects as we are forming projects to account for the safety needs along the roadway. And that kind of direct interaction with the data has never been possible before in real time and easy to access. So the first phase of our presentation today is going to be showing you this tool and showing you how to navigate it and then giving you access to it so all of you are able to do this. The second phase of our presentation is going to be with Stan, and he's going to talk about the former auto generator. We're renaming it, so it's not the auto generator anymore, that the design teams are using to interface with the Manly data to create summary sheets. And we're making that more accessible too. And we're putting that online in the same tool with the crash data. So again, a seamless process from beginning to end. We're hoping to make the data accessible, more useful, easier to access, and easier for us to keep it up to date. So we're not just sending you updated flat files and Excel spreadsheets and trying to keep versions under control and that sort of thing. So, is that a decent introduction here? I'm going to hand it over to Clancy. Clancy's going to steer us through several examples of how to interact with the data, and I'll be playing commentary along the way. So I've already warned him I'm going to be stepping over him. So.
All right. Does this mic work as well?
It looks like it works.
Okay. Excellent. So yeah, as Scott said, I'm going to be doing a demonstration and kind of giving all of you a initial training on how to use the application for safety analysis. And what we hope you'll see is that you yourself can learn to use it very quickly. Our goal here is to give you some initial exposure to how it works, how you interact with it, and what the data is showing, and then you all will be able to log in yourselves and begin to explore it further. So I'm going to spend about 5 minutes just giving you a lightning tour, so don't worry about remembering everything. Just want to get you a feel for how it works, and then what we're going to do is go through a few scenarios of an analysis to give you some examples of how we anticipate you being able to use the application. Within the application, the initial view is, of course, a map with some charts here on the right side.
Let me do something.
Oh.
Sorry. We were just meshing with the screen resolution here and translating to the overhead projector. You want that one or that one? That one looks good.
Better.
Okay.
Thanks. So within the Numetric application, you'll find that all the data is presented visually in charts, maps, making it easy to digest and understand. So there are 3 tools I'm going to show you. Here on this left side menu, you see we have crash query, network screening, and safety analysis. So the tool we're in right now is the crash query tool. Within crash query, there's a map of individual crash points. You navigate this like any other map, and each crash is represented by an individual dot colored by the severity, yellow being a no-injury crash, red being a fatal crash. And you can click on an individual crash and get the details for that crash. So I click on this, and I see at the top this is a fatal crash. I see the crash ID, the route number, looks like this was on a local road. I can see the location information, the different crash attributes, roadway details. Some of these roadway details come from the Manly data, the feature inventory data. Others come from the crash data. And if there's certain attributes that aren't available, this one's on a local road, for example, it simply says not available. So you know that's why that's there. We have our crash attributes, and then as Scott mentioned, we have a list of potential countermeasures. So what we've done in the application is there's a set of algorithms built in that essentially looks at each crash and says, based on these attributes, what are some of my options for a countermeasure that could mitigate this crash? So if you're doing an analysis for a project, you can look at these and get some initial suggestions for what you should be considering. And so the idea with these algorithms or countermeasure suggestions is to jumpstart that analysis process. These algorithms are intended to do what many of us that have done safety analysis a lot are already doing. You're looking for patterns of attributes and common patterns within the crashes. And so by adding these to the crashes, we're helping all users get that type of information, and you can even sort and filter by those countermeasures. And I'll show you that a little further later. And get the individual vehicle details. Now, if I want to filter by a certain attribute in the tool, I can use any of these charts to filter. So this chart is representing our injury types. I'm going to click on the no injury crashes, and you see our other charts update, our map updates, and then up here in this bar we get a no injury tag indicating that we filtered by that attribute. And every chart works the same. So our crash types are represented here. I'm going to click on intersection related. It filters, everything updates accordingly. Same thing for the months. And on these bar charts, I can also drag select. So if I only want my summer months, I'm going to drag across these 3 months here. All 3 are added to the filter, and I'm now only seeing the summer months. So again, we're trying to make it lightning fast for you to be able to dig into the data and look for those patterns and opportunities to improve safety. Some of the other views in the tool, there's a heat map view represented on the second icon. I'll cover this a little bit more later. So it shows spatially where crashes are concentrated, aggregates all these crash counts to the segment level. You can look at the individual crashes in a table view. This is good for crashes that aren't located, that won't appear on the map. You can scroll through all the crashes here, click on an individual crash to get the details again, so you don't have to scroll horizontally for miles and miles in Excel anymore. I'm excited about that. Hope someone else is. You can get the details very quickly. Down here on the left side, you can change what columns are seen. So all of the attributes are available here. You can pick what you want to see, and then it'll show up in your list in the table. The chart view, if you're preparing a report or presentation, you can use this to create some charts for that or look for some patterns in the data. There's a few different bar charts, and then also a cross tab, which is similar to the summaries you've seen in SMS in the past, where you can pick the rows and columns that you're seeing. And then this final view is sort of a dashboard view of all the attributes in the crash represented visually. That's a quick overview of... Yeah, so all of these are also filterable. So if I only want to see crashes with 2 vehicles involved, I'm just going to click here. It adds it up to the bar. And then if I go back to any of my other views, like my points view, that filter persists, and I'm still seeing just that information.
So where you pull filters down from? You want to just look at like pedestrian?
So there's a chart in here for pedestrian, or I haven't even shown you guys typing. Sorry about that. Right here in this bar, I can start typing pedestrian, and I can filter by pedestrian involved, not pedestrian involved, the event sequences of pedestrian, first harmful event. Any attribute that has pedestrian in it, you're going to see it there. You just start typing. So for a lot of you, you may not know the crash data really well or know exactly what's in there. This is meant to be very easy for you to come in and say, okay, I want to look at, I'm interested in animal crashes. Okay, I can do domestic animal, wild animal. Okay, that looks interesting. Let's get rid of one of these, since there's probably not many crashes with both of those. Anyway, so you can explore the data very quickly. The network screening application, this shows the safety index layer, and then you can also look at 2 other safety layers that UDOT has developed. I'll talk about these briefly a little bit later, but you interact with this data the same, except it's only segment-based data in that module. And then safety analysis module is where you go when you have a specific project level analysis you're ready to do. So crash query, if you get one thing out of this, remember that crash query and network screening are more for exploration. And then safety analysis is when I already know where I want to look, I already have my project, I need to look for safety if there are safety improvements necessary. So that's really the lightning tour. I'm going to start here in safety analysis now to begin with some of our scenarios. What's our time looking? Okay, so Here in safety analysis, you see much of the same data we've already looked at. It's just presented and optimized in a way for when you're analyzing a specific project. So essentially what has been done in the past frequently with the operational safety reports, or OSR. If you were doing that level of analysis, this is where you would go. Or now, because the data is so much easier to access and get to, we hope and anticipate that this level of analysis can be done for every project. Orange book, purple book. Am I allowed to say that, Scott? Okay, great. So I'm just going to start putting in a route. So say you're a traffic engineer or a project manager or a roadway designer, and you need to see if on this project there's an opportunity to improve safety. I'm going to come here and type in a route. We're going to do Route 126. By the way, quick disclaimer, I'm going to give a few examples from various regions. These are just quick examples. If you're from the region and disagree with anything I say, I'm sure you are correct. Just an example. So that's the disclaimer for you. Now you notice when I type in a route number, I'm given 0126 and 0126P. So when you're filtering or searching by a route, you can search by the entire route or just one side of the route. So let's type 0015 instead. And you see here I'm given 0015N, P, or just 0015. So if I want a single direction, you pick the positive or negative. If you want both directions, you pick just the four digits. So Route 126, our example, because it's not a divided route, I'll get the same results, whichever one I pick, but both are available in there. So I select the route. I'm then given the min and max mile points. Let's go from 2 to 6. And I click add, and the route shows up in my list here on the left side. And then on the right side, let's zoom out a little bit more here. Sorry, this resolution's. On the right side, we now have a tabbed interface where we can look at some of this data. So this overview screen is intended to give you a quick view of safety performance and history on this route. So on the left side, we have the safety index here. We are seeing every single segment that falls within that mile point 2 to 6, its safety index score. So the segments don't always match up, and we're not going to force you ever to stick with a certain segment because that's how we broke it up on the safety index. You picked mile point 2 to 6, and we'll show you anything we can within that range. So it's intended to be a lot more flexible that way. So these colors also give you a little bit of relativity to show you where it ranks on that scale. So initially on safety index, it looks like this route has a lot of high scores. We see a lot of red here, and we get our crash rate ratios as well. Our next model is the frequency model. Again, this is a model that UDOT developed with BYU. I'm not going to get into the weeds of how it works. I think that's probably another discussion. But essentially, the colors tell you what you need to know. So within this model, each segment is ranked. So red is bad, green is good. So I can see here, okay, looks like we've got one red segment, the rest is yellow, and a little bit of green. And then the next model, severity model, again, we're seeing the same thing. So the idea here is we're giving you this data readily available so you can start to make some initial judgments of, is there a problem here? Is there something we need to be looking at? On the screen also, you get your crash rates, your total crashes, your roadway details, including your functional class, AADT, number of lanes, and your speed limits. And then you also get a list of every single severe crash on that route. So severe is a fatal crash or serious injury crash, level 4 or 5. And they're sorted by mile points, so you can get an initial view here of, are there severe crashes and do they exhibit a pattern? Are they next to each other? Are they similar manners of collision? And on this list, you can click on them. So this is a parked vehicle. Let's check that out. You can click on it and get the same segment detail that or crash detail that we were looking at before to find out more about that crash. The stats screen is the dashboard view that we looked at earlier. Same statistics, chart for each attribute in the crash data, and works the same. I can explore these and start to see what patterns there are. Now, in these 4 boxes here, these box charts are meant to represent proportion, but we use a box because sometimes a crash can be represented in multiple squares. So that's what you're seeing on these. Those potential countermeasures that I mentioned earlier, we break them into 3 groups: intersection countermeasures, road departure countermeasures, and other. So I'm exploring this route looking for if there's an opportunity for safety improvement. I can come in and see how many crashes are associated with each potential improvement. So I see here it looks like there's 96 crashes where a left turn phasing change is an option I should consider. And that's where we want to emphasize that these are suggestions. They're potential countermeasures. Like left turn phasing changes, we don't have data for what left turn phasing exists at the signals out there. So you as the engineer may know, or we'll need to go out and see. Maybe we already have full protected lefts everywhere, and this actually isn't an option. But again, the idea is to suggest options and jumpstart that analysis process. We can see that there's 42 crashes where we recommend you consider center rumble strips, and 34 where a bicycle warning sign is an option. So if one of these looks like something we should dig into further, again, we can just click on it, add it to our filter, and now we're seeing data only relative to that attribute. I'm going to remove it for now. The map view is my favorite view. So we have our map with the crash points we can zoom into here, and below it we have our crash type chart, so we can see what crash types are most common, and then we have our crash distribution by mile point. So we see within the mile point range where most crashes are occurring. So again, as the analyst, you can see, okay, looks like we have a concentration here. That's something I want to look into a little further. You can click on that bar, and it's immediately going to filter to that exact mile point range for you, and you're now only seeing those crashes. Looks like this is at an intersection with Antelope Drive here. And then if I go back to my stats view, I'm also seeing only those crashes that apply to that filter, and I can go back to my countermeasure charts and see, okay, for these crashes, what countermeasure is suggested most commonly. And let's say that filter is not precise enough for me. I can do a map filter. I'm going to press and hold shift. You see my pointer changes to an arrow, and then I can just drag select over the crashes that I want. And you see it says map filter up here. So you can drill down as deep as you want to into that data. Yeah.
Is there a way to look at the crashes at the same time on Antelope Drive in that exact area, just so you have an entire intersection represented?
Yeah, so in safety analysis, it's limited to one route, but in Crash Query, the other module, you can look at as many routes as you want. So yeah, safety analysis is limited to one route because that's typically the context in which we're doing these analyses. But in Crash Query, I'll show you how you can do that for a full intersection. And so now that I've drilled down to a very specific location, I can look at what crash types. Of course, most are intersection related, angle crashes, teenage driver involved. I can go to the table and look at these crashes individually, like we saw before. And the table also allows you to sort by mile point or by time of day, just by clicking on the column headers here. And then let's say in this analysis you've decided that you've identified a countermeasure that we want to apply as part of an HSIP project or another project. You can develop your benefit cost analysis right here in the tool. So we have our benefit cost summary, and there's nothing shown here right now, but I'm going to click Add Treatment. And our initial list shows all the crashes that are in our current filter, so just the crashes we've selected. I can scroll this and add or remove them if I want to, but you can also remove them or add them later, so you don't have to in this screen. I'm going to click Next. And now I can identify a treatment and crash modification factor, or CMF, to apply to that crash. So I can press down and just start scrolling through the list. So this is from UDOT's predefined list of CMFs. And I can pick which treatment I want, or let's say we're going to do left turn phasing. I think that was one of the options. And I just start typing left, and I get a few options that are suggested for this. Again, I'm sure there's already protected lefts everywhere here. I don't know. It's just an example. And when I select that countermeasure, it automatically populates the service lifetime and the CMFs for each injury level. And if I don't know the cost, if I'm doing a preliminary analysis, I can just put 0, and that's just fine. If we're in the design process and I know the cost, I can put in a cost there, and we'll get the results. I'm now going to click Add, and it automatically calculates for me my benefit cost summary, the number of crashes reduced, and then the BC ratio in this list. And if I want to review my parameters or edit that analysis, you can click the little pencil icon. I can change the name, so we'll just call this Add Protected Lefts. Change my cost, change my CMFs, and I can review the crashes. So let's say I'm looking at these crashes and I see, okay, here's a side swipe, same direction crash. It's probably not applicable to my treatment. I can review it, and if I decide, this isn't applicable to what we're doing, I'm going to click Remove Crash, and you'll see the 7.52 number immediately updates. Or maybe not. Yeah, that crash may not. There we go. That's because it was a level 1 crash and the CMF was 1.0. So that's why. So it is working as expected. So anyway, you can edit the parameters there, add or remove crashes. And if you're doing further analysis on this route and find some more crashes you want to add, you can go back to add another treatment. I'm going to click Next, and I can click Use Treatment and just click on that treatment that I already created. And when I click Add, it won't duplicate those crashes. You see it went back to 7.52 because it only added that one crash that I just barely removed. So it won't let you mess up in that regard. It won't duplicate the crashes there. And then when I'm done with my analysis or just want to save my work, I can click Save. I can give this a name. Let's call this Region 1 Projects. And my saved analyses are going to show up here on the left side where I can come back and find it later. And then as you're doing this, say you're a designer or project manager, you're going to be looking at multiple routes for the next funding year. You can come in and add as many as you want. So let's add one, Route 108. I'm going to go from mile point 5 to 10, add it to the list, and here we have it in our list. And you'll notice under Route 126, it shows my benefit cost that I calculated. So as I build these analysis, I can start to rank and prioritize these, which is especially helpful in a situation where you're developing a list for HSIP funding. You can do your analyses, and then using these arrows, you can move them up and down the list just to help keep yourself organized with that. And like I said, you can add as many routes as you want to this list. Let's add one more route here, Scott.
As you're doing that, let me jump in. If this is seeming like it's complicated and overwhelming, 2 comments. There's some great tutorials and even some little YouTube clips about reminding you of the steps and how to do it. And also, just assure you, after you do it 2 or 3 times, it's really easy to catch on once you do it a couple times.
Yeah, I've used it for a while, so if it feels that way, don't worry. So anyway, I can add as many as I want to this list. I can do my benefit cost analyses. I can add the same route twice if I want to. So let's say we did a project 2 years ago and we want to do a before-after analysis. I'm going to add the same route in here. And when I do that, so we've got Route 193 twice. In each analysis, I can filter by the years. Let's go back to our Sarah's stats screen. So say for this one, I just want to include 2010 through 2012. Oh, I picked a route 2010. There's a difference there. I can filter this set by those specific years, and then filter this set by the other years that I want to see. So in that before-after scenario, it's also very helpful in that regard. How's our time looking? I'm going to jump to our next scenario. I want to come back here later if we have time and let you all shout out routes, and we'll look at it. We'll play around. So again, this is the safety analysis module, which is, like I said, when you've identified a specific route you need to analyze and you're ready to look at the details. So Crash Query is, as I mentioned earlier, more for exploration. So let's do another scenario. Say you're sitting in your office and you get a call from, what did I pick? American Forks Mayor. Is Region 3 here? Somebody, anyone? Okay, good. I can say whatever I want then. And they say, hey, we've got this S-curve on US 89, and it's really dangerous, causing all sorts of problems. In the past, in this scenario, it's going to take you a couple weeks to pull the data, do some analysis, maybe create some maps, but our hope is that with this tool, you can answer that question right there while they're on the phone, or you can just go sit down and meet with them and do it right in front of them. And they can see what you're using and see how easy it is to explore that data. So you get this call, they say, hey, we've got this S-curve causing all kinds of problems. What can you do for us? Now I need to find it. There we are. So we get in here, and you find the S-curve they're talking about, and okay, I need to filter by this section. I'm going to use my shift-click tool and select all these crashes, and you realize, oh, I've got some of these local street crashes I don't want. So now I'm going to filter by Route 89 only, and you see again here we have 0089 and then P and N. So in general, I would recommend you always use just the 4-digit code, just because for the routes where there's a small piece that's divided like 89 or 6 or 40, you make sure you're always getting that data. But in the interstate, if you just want directional, pick your P or N. So I'm going to add this filter so that I have my map filter, and now I'm only seeing the crashes on 89. Let's say I decide I don't like the size of my box. I can adjust that size right there. You get this little undo arrow in case you want to go back to what you had. And I can also move my box around. So I press and hold shift again, and we're just going to move it up to here. So I've identified my location, and then say I'm in the meeting with the mayor or the city engineer. I can now go to our stats view and start to explore with them and show them what's happening in this area. So these charts, we call them bubble charts, they show the severity distribution by year. So I can look in here and see, well, okay, there's no severe crashes because we're all yellow and orange here. So we're not having a serious injury or fatal crash problem. Crashes look reasonably consistent across the years. We see our month distribution. Time of day looks like our lunchtime and our peak hour have the greatest concentration. We can see our weather condition patterns. We can come down here and look at our countermeasures and see what options we're suggesting. And you as the local engineer probably know which of these are and aren't viable there, so you can talk about those with them. You can see which direction the vehicles were traveling, which could be especially relevant here where there's an intersection nearby, so you want to know which way they're going. It looks like almost half of them are westbound, which would suggest maybe there is a problem with backing at the intersection. And so you can sit down and on this phone call or with that interested party in a few seconds have an intelligent conversation about what's going on there and why we do or don't expect to make some kind of improvement. So that process, like I said, of weeks of time of getting feedback to them, we're hoping that can become minutes, which will allow all of us to do our jobs better and focus more on priority activities. And let's do one more quick scenario here. Let's go to the network screening tool. So in this scenario, let's say you're region traffic engineer, and you're looking for projects to submit for HSIP funding. And for those of you that aren't traffic engineers and don't know what that is, don't worry, it's just the safety projects that are funded each year. So you come into the network screening module, and you can explore any of those three models that we talked about. The safety index, I believe you all are familiar with, the frequency model, and severity model. So just a quick overview of those. Those are both pretty advanced statistical models that were created with BYU, and one considers frequency more heavily, and the other considers severity more heavily, as suggested by the names. So both are very valuable and valid, just different ways of looking at the data. So let's say we want to look at the severity model. So we're going to click on that, and we're now seeing the severity model data. And I'm going to go back to my chart view here on the right side. And let's say I'm in region 4. I can type in here and apply a filter to just my region. So now I'm just seeing the segments in my region. I can also filter by any city or county. So maybe we just want to look in San Juan County. Let's see. Am I doing that right? What's going on here? There we go. So Washington County, we can filter by those. Sorry, this should be allowing you to filter by both. Okay, there we go, we woke it up. So you can get as detailed as you want to in that regard. So I can now explore these segments visually on the map. Let's say there's a segment I'm interested in. I can click on that segment, and I get the details for that segment. So I see my severity distribution. So it looks like we have 3 fatal crashes, 12 serious injury crashes. And on this network screening metrics list, I see where that segment ranks on all 3 of these network screening models. So we're in the severity model. We see it ranks number 4. So that is saying that it is the 4th most dangerous, or
4th highest in the model.
4th highest. Yeah, we won't say most dangerous. 4th highest in the model. Be careful with wording here. Frequency model ranks 2600, and so that shows the difference between the models. This segment doesn't have a lot of crashes, but it does have a lot of severe crashes, which is why it ranks much higher in the severity model than in the frequency model, and also the safety index, which is also very rate-oriented. But I can see my crash rates, the number of crashes, details of the road, and I can also see, again, our crash distribution, so where our concentrations are next to our severe crashes. So in our severe crashes, I can quickly see, okay, it looks like a lot of single vehicle crashes. And if I see that there's a lot occurring next to each other, looks like we have 2 at 82.7, I can look at our distribution chart and see, are there a lot of crashes happening there? Is this a pattern that we should be concerned about? So within a few seconds, you can identify, is there a pattern, and does it appear to be consistent, or could it be more of a random occurrence? You can start to make those initial judgments. And if this is a segment I'm interested in and I want to explore further in our safety analysis tool where I can do a benefit cost summary, I'm going to click Add to Analysis. And what I can do now is I can create a new safety analysis group. If you remember, in our safety analysis module, we had the list on the left side where you'd saved groups. I can create a new one, or I can add it to an existing one. So we created the conference demo test, we created Region 1 projects. We created that one last night. We're in Region 4, but for the sake of the demo, I'm going to add it to the Region 1 projects, click Add, and then when I go back to safety analysis, if I click on my Region 1 project set, you see that it's in this list now also right here. So there's that transferability when you find a route you want to explore further. Now let's jump back to network screening actually. So I'm going to jump back to network screening. And this is an important note. When you jump between the tools, it won't preserve what you've done, so make sure to save. I can save anything in any of the modules, so I'm in network screening, and I'm going to save this as Region 4 HSIP proposals. Click Save, and you see it's in my saved list here on the left side. I'll go back and apply my filter to Region 4. You can explore it on the map, but you can also explore it in the table. So the table gives the data for each of the segments. I can sort by my statewide rank. So I can see within my region which segments are ranked highest, and I can begin to explore each of these. So I can click here and see what's my crash distribution, how does it rank on all the different models, and what type of concentrations are we seeing and what severe crashes are we seeing. And in the severe crash list, again, you can always click on it and see the details for that individual severe crash. And then I can continue down the list to see any other information. And just as before, I can also change what columns are shown in the table. Now, if you need to develop a very specific map for a presentation or look at the data in another way, you can download the data. So when I click download here, it's going to download what I have in my table. So this will download a list of the segments. It's a CSV, which it has route and mile points, so you can then map it in ArcGIS if needed. And then if you want to download individual crash points for any reason, you can download those again in the crash query module. From the table view, you can pick which columns you're seeing and then download the CSV just as before. And we give that download option because the goal is to capture about 90% of the use cases or situations where you're looking at crash data. We believe at least 90% of what we do in safety analysis can be done in the tool, but there is that small 10% or so where you need to look at it in different ways so you can still access the data very quickly. You don't have to submit a request and wait weeks and weeks for whatever approvals or data to be sent to you. That's our quick tour and scenarios. I want to leave a little more time than originally planned for questions. And if one of you has a project you've been looking at and you want an example of how we'd look at it, you can shout it out and we'll take a look. So, Scott, do you want to address anything first, or should we open it up?
Let's do this first.
Okay.
Then we'll talk about it.
So, questions, thoughts, Mark?
Yeah, well, one thought, thank you. I mean, this is awesome. Like, this is going to help a lot, I'm sure, for all of us. But you mentioned unknown locations.
Mm-hmm.
Are you saying just they're geographically not located on the map, and they do have mileposts designated?
Great lead into a topic here. Let me address this real quick. First of all, this database includes every crash reported statewide, state routes and non-state routes. If the crash comes to us with a geolocation, it will appear on the map right away. If we have to wait for our staff to go geolocate it, it could have a few months of a lag before you see a dot on the map. We refresh this database every month with the most current data, and you'll notice down here on the left, I'm sure you can't read that. This shows the date range that's currently available to query on the map. So right now it says January 1st, 2010 to September 30th, 2015. And we update this once a month. So our goal is to keep this up to date. We refresh it at the beginning of the month. So for those of you in the region meetings that do a monthly report or an update of your fatalities and stuff like that, you'll be able to pull this up live in your meetings and view those crashes.
You mentioned the reporting and putting it in presentation. How do you get this data visually out?
Great question. So right now, there's no pre-canned export a PDF type of report option. We expect to add that capability in the future, but our hope is also that we'll begin to use the data more and more electronically. One of the features that will be added in the next 3 weeks or so, 3 to 4 weeks, is the ability to share a query. So if you're running an analysis, you can save it and then share it with someone else, and they can see those results. So we are moving more towards data being used and stored only electronically, but we do expect that at some point in the future we'll have some sort of export report type of option.
And that would be helpful if we're responding to public inquiries or dealing with elected officials where they don't necessarily have access or want to have
Yeah.
access. We just need a snapshot.
Do you want to?
I would like the ability, and given that these graphs are dynamic, it's really hard to I'd like the ability to download a JPEG so you can put it in a presentation. For now, you're gonna have to do a screen capture. I apologize, but it's kind of a limitation. It gets pretty sophisticated when you think of all the different scenarios that you can generate here on the fly and then try to capture this automatically. It's a little bit difficult.
And Mark, I'm realizing there's part of your question I wanted to address that I didn't get to. You see at this gray bar at the top, I don't know if you can see those numbers, but it says showing 2,000 of 282,000 crashes. But we see our total crashes is 290,000. So the 290,000 is all crashes statewide in that time period. The 282 is the crashes that have geolocation data that are mapped. So that's the distinction there. The crash, when you filter or look at charts, you're seeing all crashes, whether they're mapped or not, but the map will tell you how many are actually mappable in that area. And the 2,000 is just to make sure the performance is good. You're rarely going to need to look at 2,000 points at a single time. Or
But the mileposts are identified, and so when you pull out the data, they will still be there when you're filtering by mile.
yes. So if you are exporting point data, the CSV export will include any column shown in this table view. So by default,
Scroll over and show them. There's a route and mile point there as well as at the end. Go the other
so
end.
route, mile point, and then at the end,
The UTM coordinates are there too.
an exit number, ramp ID.
As
So
long as you're filtering by milepost rather than mile point square.
Let me clarify. If there's a route and mile point, there's also a lat and long. And this is how we keep the data up to date with changes in the linear referencing system, because we have that geospatial coordinate. For example, right now, we're just updating this data to fix 209 and SR 48, because we had a huge jurisdictional transfer in Region 2. So next month, you'll see the data reflected the new route and mile points for those two roads, because we basically don't own half of New Bingham Highway anymore. So.
Paul?
Good question. How do you sort through different years, different mileposts, because route numbers change yet, and the mileposts you're using?
The goal is to keep this current. So this will reflect the current linear referencing system. So we go back and change the historical data to reflect the current linear referencing system. We don't want you to have to track all those changes.
Other questions?
Will
Well.
you keep, presumably next year you'll knock 2010 off and it'll be 2011 and 2015. Will you keep older data available?
We've been talking about that.
Electronic, not printing?
We've been talking about that. Our goal originally was to keep the most recent 5 years. But since this is just tabular data and it doesn't take a lot of storage space in the database, I think we're going to keep 2010. And in fact, you may recall me explaining earlier that since 2012 we've been receiving everything electronic. We're going back and actually cleaning up the 2010 and 2011 data even more to make sure every crash, even before the 2012 time period on the local roads, has geospatial coordinates to it. So we're going to keep it persistent for now. I think we can keep about 10 years here and not bump up against any data limits.
Mm-hmm.
So we have the data, we might as well display it, show it off, frankly. So.
Did you say what your plan is for allowing access for people outside of UDOT?
Well, okay,
Should we get into that?
let's jump into housekeeping. That's a great question.
Well, I'm going to I'll show the public portal
Go
real
ahead.
quick. So your account menu up here, my account just lets you change what name is shown and your password. Users, that won't show up for most of you. And then to actually get to the site, you go to udot.numetric.com. And then when you get there, you'll be on this public-facing page. This is a page that anyone in the world can see. Part of it's transparency and high-level reporting. If you have questions, a lot of times we hope you can refer people here. It gives some key metrics, our total crashes by month statewide, fatals by month, and then crashes by manner of collision. And then these bars have a current year, last year, and a 3-year average. So you can get some of that high-level data. You can also click on more details and see a lot more of the charts of the attributes shown visually. So again, that website, udot.newmetric.com, and this is a public-facing report view of high-level metrics that anyone can get to. And then signing in.
Why don't you cover that?
Okay.
Click on sign in. So if you have a utah.gov email address, you can register yourself here. So why don't you show them that first?
Yeah, so when you click sign in, if you have utah.gov, just go to sign up, and you'll be prompted for your email address. You see at utah.gov, click create account, and it will email you an invitation. You then follow that invitation and create your password, and you're in.
If you're a consultant or a local government and you don't have a utah.gov email account, email at this address that I'm going to give you shortly. Do we actually have that on the front page?
Yeah, it's on this page.
So a prompt, okay. So crashstudies@utah.gov is our support email address. 2 or 3 people at UDOT are watching that at all times, and they'll respond to your questions about the data. And if you forget it, it's down there at the bottom of the page. crashstudies@utah.gov.
So yeah, again, if you just remember one thing, just remember udot.newmetric.com. You go there, and then at the bottom is the crash studies at utah.gov.
Let me talk a little bit about, people immediately ask the question, what can I use the data for? Who can have access to it? Right now, we're limiting this to business purposes only. So if you work for the state government or you're a member of the state government or local entities. In the future, we're going to talk about exposing more and more of this to the public. There's some sensitivities here, obviously, but frankly, if you submit a grammar request to me, I have to give you this data anyway. I frankly would rather have us tell our story in our way than let people tell the story for us. So there's a 2-paragraph disclaimer and terms of use when you sign up. Please read it. It's important. One of the things that's most important to make you aware of is our data is protected against discovery in a court of law. And it can't be used to sue UDOT, or it can't be used to sue anybody. So it's very important to us that if you use this data in reports and charts and graphs and presentations, if you use any of this that are being displayed or given to the public, you identify the source of the data as being UDOT so that we can track it back to us as being the source. This is more geeky, and I understand if you forget it, but the statement's right here to remind you. The federal code that restricts this data from court is 23 U.S.C. 409, and when people ask me, I also ask that you include that somewhere in your report or chart or graph or presentation to cite the specific federal code that keeps this data from being used against us in court. So far, we've been very successful at keeping the data out of court and not being used against us. So we have the data. There's legitimate business purposes for using the data. We have no reason to restrict it from anybody that has a need for it. Did we beat that to death? Yes. So I'm relying on your professional judgment and your reputation of your company that you're not going to abuse the access that we've given you.
So then, in that context, an example, would you grant like a login or access, or would you?
Yes. Yeah. If you email me and ask for access, I'm going to give it to you. Please be aware, we have the ability to track what you're querying and your use of the data. So this is a practicality. If some of the data shows up in court, we might even be able to identify who gave it out. So I hope that doesn't sound Big Brother-ish, but it's a,
But it is.
it's a practicality for liability purposes that we need to track who's accessing the data. I hope you understand that.
I want to talk about help briefly. So there's this icon at the top right, it says View Help. That'll take you to a user manual. It's pretty brief. After you've played with it a little, I would recommend taking a quick glance through. We're also going to be adding a few videos there to explain some of the functions, and you can jump around here to see different information. If you have quick questions like, can I filter by this, or how does this tool work, you can chat with our support team here just by clicking that. If you have questions about, can I use the data, what does this field mean, how do I use the data, those questions should go to Scott, or specifically that crash studies email is how you'd get your most prompt response for questions like that. And then if you do have any feedback or input, we want to hear it. You can send it to us through the chat or email Scott or that crash studies email as well with any comments or suggestions.
Let me address some future enhancements. For those of you who've used the data before, you know there's an officer's narrative that goes along with the report, as well as a crash diagram. Shortly, we're going to provide abilities in that crash detail, individual crash detail, to view the officer diagram and the narrative of the crash. The narrative of the crash is causing us a little problem right now because sometimes the officer uses the name of a driver or a victim in the crash in the narrative. So we're playing with algorithms to scrub the personal information out of it. So that's the holdup, but we hope to have that solved here shortly.
And then I already mentioned, but the ability to share a query will be added within a few weeks, and then also the ability to jump to a location in the navigator, virtual navigator. I think Stan will be showing you that later, but when you look at a crash detail, you can jump straight to the virtual navigator or road view type view. Street view always works, it's Google Maps, but that will be added as well. Anyway, and I guess, I don't know if you have more you want to talk about, Scott.
I think
We could turn the time, okay? Take it away, Stan.
Thank you.
You want to just start with your PowerPoint?
Yeah.
That one?
Nope.
The other one?
Yep. Thank you. I'll do it.
Okay. Do you want this or you want to stand there?
I'm going to stand here for a bit, Scott. We're going to change tags, but I'm actually going to go back to Numetric. See this little icon here? It's the vehicle. There's going to be another icon added to this. It's going to be, we haven't figured out exactly what it's going to be, but it's going to be the design app tool. So one-stop shopping. You'll be able to you start the concept report with safety, concept report with what is the roadway out there? How many miles of asphalt do we have? What's the guardrail situation? So one-stop shopping. What I'm going to talk about is how we started this project, seems like a long time ago now. What I'm talking about is one of the things that's making this all possible is we've been collecting data. And some of you may know that in 2012, we went out with a contract, and we hired this contractor from Madison, Wisconsin, Manley Communications. And the purpose of that contract was to geospatially locate just about everything the department owns, from fence post to fence post, and even outside the right-of-way, billboards. So we have attributes for all the signs, all the guardrail, all the square miles, the square feet of concrete pavement in Region 2 on I-215 from milepost 19 to 20. There was a collaboration. You can see all the people at UDOT who collaborated. It was maintenance, traffic and safety, structures, GIS. So that was the real key here. We went out and collected all this information once for everybody. And you saw how Scott and Clancy are using that in safety. I'm going to show you how we're using it in design now. But first, to give you a little bit more background, the upper picture here is our 3 high-definition images stitched together. We take them every 26 feet, 200 per mile in each direction, 400 per mile, 7 million photos. Every 2 years, we go out and collect this information. We started in 12, did 14. We are driving the roads right now for 16. So we have these pictures that we've linked to many of our business applications, so you can go out and virtually drive the road. It's much better quality than Street View, high definition, and I'll show you that later. And then this picture down here is the way the contractor collected all this information. They used LiDAR. 1 million points of light were bouncing off objects, coming back to the receiver. We were geospatially locating. The people then in Madison, Wisconsin, attributed all of these things: guardrail signs, barriers, signals, painted lines. So I can tell you all the pavement markings on any state road. I can tell you all the signs and the METCD code, the height, the width, the color, the condition. And we also did pavement condition at the same time. So I'm just going to give you a brief, I'm not going to go through this, but as I mentioned, every single sign, METCD code, the support, the barrier, the noise walls, bin walls, retaining walls. I can tell you the square foot of every piece of concrete on the state has. Shoulders, all the striping. And I won't go through this anymore. This is down in Moab, but the rumble strips, surface areas, I'm going to skip from that and go to the web. So what happened here was a lot of people around the department said, how can we use this data? We can use it in safety, we can use it in maintenance, can we use it in design? So there were people at the regions who started thinking about this. Shane Marshall was one of the first. I presented this to him, Region 3, a long time ago, and he said, I wonder if we can do purple and orange books. Region 4 and Region 3, people like Monty and Cameron and Linda took this and asked us if we could build an app to pre-populate purple and orange book projects. For those who don't know what purple and orange book projects are, purple are rehabilitation projects. Orange book are preservation projects. We do about $200 million worth of those projects every year across the state. They're relatively safe, relatively easy to do. It's just a pavement project. But we have to take care, we have to put back the rumble strips, we have to put back the pavement markings, we have to take care of substandard guardrails, substandard signs. So the question that the regions asked us, is there any way you can take all that data that I just showed you and pre-populate our bid summary sheets for purple and orange? And so I was fortunate to have a smart guy, where is he? John Guyman, came and worked for me back row. Were you the back row during school also? So anyway, John worked for me a year and a half ago, and I said, John, can you do this? A lot of people at the regions are asking. And he said, sure. We can build the capability of taking all that data and pre-populating bid sheets for purple and orange book projects. And for those of you may know, we have that right now, that capability, and we call it the auto generator. So for those who may know, it's spreadsheet capability right now. So you come over here, you go to this thing called the auto generator, you download a couple of spreadsheets for the mileposts that you're interested in, the project you're interested in. It was relatively clunky. And so a couple months ago, I asked Clancy and John and Scott if I could join forces with them on this project and build another module that would do that, what I said, which was pre-populate bid sheets for purple and orange book projects. So what I've done here is I've already started a project, but let's start new. Does it look familiar with what you've been seeing the last hour? It should, I hope. So let's build a project. Let's say we're going to build a project, and I'm going to go to Weber Canyon. And I'm going to go from the mouth of Weber Canyon, which is milepost 8, to milepost 14. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to select Region 1. So what this is doing is linking those features with the bid cost for signs and guardrail for pavement in Region 1. If I was in Region 2, you would put in Region 2, et cetera. So I'm doing Region 1. And so now I've defaulted right here to roadway. Let's say we're going to road a mill out. Let's say we're going to road a mill out 2 inches. Do we want to put rumble strips back? Yes. But now we have this big hole in the ground, right? Got to fill it. Okay, what are we going to fill it with? Well, we got to put a tack down first, right? So there's the tack. And then we're going to add that. And you can see I've added the tack and the cost. See that? $200,000? It's going to cost $200,000 to do these, what did I have, 8 to 14, 6 miles of roadway? Still got a hole in the ground, so let's add another treatment. Let's put in 3/4 inch. And let's put in 1.5 inches. And there's the cost, $800,000. And now we're going to add another treatment because do another tack, and we added that. Here's the cost, $200,000 again. We knew that, right? Okay, so let's put an SMA, and we'll put in 1 inch. Whoop, got too much. So we're going to cancel this out right there, and you're going to add that treatment again, and I'm going to put in 0.5. So there you go. So we're talking about design, but I can see Todd Richens over here from maintenance. What does Todd do when he has money at the end of the season? He puts out contractors really fast because it's snow money that he didn't use. And he has to spend it by July 1st. So Todd, this is a really easy way for maintenance to be able to estimate how much that contract is going to cost. So it's not only design, it's not only for maintenance, but what about consultants? So what did I just do? I gave consultants who are interested in chasing a project with UDOT the ability to tell right away, this is a simple project, but why can't you use this information to get smarter about a project? So when you put in a proposal, you have the preliminary idea of what the rumble strips are going to cost, what rotomilling is going to cost. I didn't put soft spots back in there, but I could. I could have put soft spots. So soft spots, let's put in 1/2 inch. And there I am defaulting to 2%, but that's pretty high. I'm just going to do 0.5%. So there again is your soft spots. And I'll go back to the overview. So we've filled in traffic control, mobilization. It's all defaulting right now, but I could have changed all of those. This is a canyon. So this canyon is a little bit difficult to work on, I would think. So let's put the preliminary engineering up to 5%. And change orders. Because we're in that canyon, I think it's going to be a little bit more than 5%. I just changed it to 10. So what I'm doing here on the fly is what ifs. I'm doing a concept level report right now. I'm doing a final design right now. I'm doing a what if we had money at the end of the year for snow. So I just did this. Let me go to signs. Remember I said we have to replace signs if they're substandard? Well, here are all the signs. You can see them. And let's scroll down a little bit to a fair sign. There's a fair sign right there. And I'm going to put it in. I'm going to replace that. So let's go back and see if it found it. Sorry, go to the overview. And we should see signs here somewhere. Sorry. There it is, one sign, sorry. That sign's going to cost $1,300. So we're building a project really quick. Let's go back to that sign and look at it. So yeah. I
These
was,
look better on a normal computer screen with the resolution normal. It's hard on the projector resolution.
so what I'm doing, Clancy said we're linking this to RoadView. Remember I told you about those high definition pictures and how we're adding them to our processes? So I just went to RoadView Explorer, and we're looking at Ogden Canyon, and I believe it's this sign right here. So let's flip a U-turn, and we're going to go backwards down the road to see that sign. While that's running, it's rather slow. We'll just stop that right now. Let's go back to numeric. Numeric, sorry, Clancy. So here are all the barrier on that section of roadway also. So you can see concrete barrier. If I slide down, there's a lot of concrete barrier in that canyon. But here are all the attributes associated with that. So if I wanted to add this concrete barrier to the project, I could. And it would give me the cost and then the end sections. So I can add all those and then go back to the overview. So here's the barrier we added. We added 2,000 feet of barrier. We had end sections. There's the number of gallons of paint we need, $20,000. Pavement markings, $400 of pavement markings, signs, traffic control. Let's go back to that. Increased it to 5%. There it is, updated to 5% now. And so there's the cost of this project. And now let's just go back to the navigator for a second. This is a tough section of roadway to see. So let's go to another part of the roadway, just for fun. Click on that one, see what that one looks like. And so what this is linking the LiDAR points with the images. So as an example, if I wanted to know what the width of this road was, I can measure from this image now. And so we took all of those points and put them together with every image. And so as an example, I just measured the width of the road, that lane. And if I wanted to see the LiDAR points behind it to see what I'm measuring, they're the LiDAR points associated with it. Now, you might ask, how do I know I'm going across this road perpendicular? And there's a little trick that I can do to measure perpendicular across the road. So you can see the yellow line. You can see what I'm doing. I'm drawing this line parallel to the paint stripe. And then I come back here, and you see the mouse? The mouse is going up and down, but the line is going across perpendicular. So that is the width of the road. Now we know the width of the lanes. We can measure signs. We can measure the clearance. One caveat with all of this information I'm showing you, we're doing this virtually. It doesn't take the place of going out there and looking. But what's nice is you can take all of this information out to the field now with you and spot check. You can spot check that we have the right number of surface areas, we have the right correct signs, we're measuring the width of the roadway correctly. So instead of doing this all by paper, clipboard, pencil, we can do this virtually in our office, a lot safer, then go out to the road and check it. So this has applications for designers, for maintenance, for consultants wanting to know about a project. So, John Guyman and I were the institutors of this project, along with the help from the regions. And to make this a more viable project within UDOT, we are going to have George Lukes and Fred Doring manage the day-to-day of this project. So we're going to transition from myself to Fred and George. We think that they're better qualified to do this, working with the consultant community. So you'll be talking with me if you have questions, but also George and Fred as we go forward. Now, this is not done. We're still working on it. This is only the first phase. We'll be done about December 1st. You'll go to get the login, just like Scott and Clancy mentioned on safety. You'll be able to use this app. You'll be able to export. And the export function, I can't show it to you because it's not done, are the project bid summary sheets. So if you can put in your mind's eye what those look like, this will pre-populate the striping, the sign, the barrier, and the pavement summary sheets. So I've come to the end of my discussion, unless I've forgotten something, Clancy.
Questions?
Yes, I'm gonna, or John, did I forget something? Do you like to mention?
I think that's good. Remember, you can save it and then share it with other people in the region.
And over here, I'm saving it right here.
Yeah, let me mention, as we discussed the application, Stan really wanted to make this public. We have to have you create a user account so you can save your queries and you can share it with other users. If you didn't have a user account, you couldn't have the save and share functionality. So,
Because as you know, you can use the auto generator right now. Anybody who has a browser can get to it. But to be able to save it, you have to have a login. And so we're going that way. So don't forget, this is virtual. This is not precise. This is not perfect. You got to go out in the field. George.
So Stan, I was talking with John on Friday about this, and you had mentioned maintenance. One of the tabs on the top may just be a text tab that allows maintenance to go in, see the project, and write down where soft spots are, or things of that nature that are more purposeful. The project would be aware of, because maintenance is going to know those issues better than anyone else.
That's great, George. Thank you. John?
So that will be done on December 1st. Once you've created it, you can simply share it with the maintenance that's there. They can hop in, put in their wish list, and the next time you open it, you can play around with their wish list and see which of those things you can accommodate within your budget.
Any other questions, comments? If not, we'll let you go early. Thank you very much.